No law should turn a student into a foreign policy threat. Yet that is what happened when Mahmoud Khalil stepped out of his New York apartment and into federal custody. He was a graduate student at Columbia, his notebooks filled with case law, not secrets of state. But in spring 2025, the Secretary of State himself invoked an obscure Cold War statute claiming Khalil's presence might bring serious adverse foreign policy consequences. That phrase landed like a stamp upon his name, and for 104 days he waited behind the walls of Hudson County Jail, his only weapon a copy of the Constitution. Picture the narrow walkway outside his apartment on Amsterdam Avenue, early morning light on the wet stones, as plainclothes officers step forward. No charge, no trial, only papers marked detain. Something in this does not fit within the ordinary measure of justice. And that is the riddle before us. A federal judge in Newark soon remarked that Khalil's detention looked less like law and more like reprisal for protected speech. The government denied this, saying national interest must come before comfort. But the words of that order, foreign policy consequences, do not name a crime, they name a feeling. When the Board of Immigration Appeals later upheld his removal order, another question arose. How far can an executive reach when its grasp is justified by fear? That question stands, not for this man alone, but for the measure of our republic. The courtroom in Newark came to feel like a small stage upon which a very old drama played. On one side, lawyers for the Department of Homeland Security, on the other, counsel citing the First Amendment. Behind them, pages of precedent, Korematsu, Zadvydas, Boumediene, each whispering warnings from their own seasons of fear. Yet beneath all the paper was a simpler issue. Can free speech survive if its exercise may trigger exile? And that is where the heart of this matter truly lies. The Constitution speaks not of citizens alone, but of persons. It forbids government to deprive any person of liberty without due process of law. Still, many ask, does that promise shield those who dwell among us, yet lack citizenship? History answers, it must, or law itself loses its ground, for no government ever preserved liberty by measuring it by birthplace. Picture the marble hallway of the Board of Immigration Appeals in Falls Church, Virginia, rows of case files waiting to define someone's fate. Each file bears a date, a stamp, a life. In one folder, lines of text record the 104 days that stretched into a contest between power and principle. When fear leads, principle trails behind. We have known that before. During war, suspicion dragged thousands of Japanese Americans into camps, though they had broken no law. In that era, the Supreme Court gave its blessing, and 40 years later, the nation blushed to recall it. In calmer hindsight, we saw what panic had built. Again, after 9/11, the government turned to mass detention of non-citizens said to pose risk. Months passed before courts restored the rule that even an enemy held abroad held the right to seek a judge's ear. Liberty regained its breath, but only after many silences. Think of the holding cells beneath the Capitol's shadow, their walls etched by another generation's caution. Think of the rusted latch on a camp barrack in Tule Lake, where the wind still carries names once forgotten. These images remind us that each exception we carve into due process becomes the outline of the next mistake. But what, then, is the rightful reach of power? It is broad, yet it is not boundless. The president may guard borders and define the conditions of entry. He may use the laws Congress grants, but he may not summon new power from fear itself. For fear has no clause in the Constitution, only caution does, and caution is reason bound to law. In my day, it was said that necessity knows no law. But we found that only law can save a nation in necessity. When mobs sought vengeance without trial, we called them lawless. When armies arrested without cause, we called them tyrants. It makes no difference whether the hand wears a civilian glove or a military one. Restraint must still rule it. Picture the federal courthouse steps in Minneapolis, where advocates gather holding portraits of men once detained at Guantanamo. Each tells the reporters, "We are not safer when we silence those who speak." Their echo reaches every courthouse in the land. Because law, though heavy, depends on voices light and free to lift it. Some ask, is not dissent a danger when the world itself turns hostile? But I would say, dissent is proof the world still listens. The right to speak truth to power is not a luxury. It is the boundary that prevents power from mistaking itself for truth. When the state begins to decide which opinions are useful to its image, the republic itself grows quiet. It is a soft silence at first, made of missing voices, erased invitations, unshared ideas. Yet that silence gathers weight until even loyal hearts lose the habit of speaking. Picture Khalil again, bent over a library table at Columbia, writing an essay on due process he may never be allowed to defend. One guard told him, "You're making your case to ghosts." But ghosts are what we become when we trade courage for caution. The founders feared that very trade. They wrote not merely to limit a king, but to discipline themselves. Power was to answer always to reason, reason to conscience, conscience to God. When any link in that chain breaks, the whole loses balance. Still, some insist that security demands swift, secret hands. They forget that the same claim has excused every excess since monarchy itself. Power unchecked may act faster, but never wiser. The lasting strength of America lies in the pause before action, the breath before command, the hearing before sentence. That pause is called law. Think of the candlelight outside Newark's federal courthouse, where students hold signs quoting the Fifth Amendment. The wind flickers their small flames against the marble wall, yet none goes out. A passing veteran salutes them once and says, "Keep it steady." That single gesture joins 2 generations guarding the same fire. The deeper lesson of Khalil's case is not about one man's detention, but about a nation's memory. Each time we stretch an old law to fit a new fear, we promise it is only for now. Yet for now has a way of becoming forever once precedent settles in its chair. The Constitution does not grow by shortcuts. It deepens by endurance. There is a truth worth repeating, even when it tires the ear. Freedom is not the gift of safety, it is the cost of it. The more freely people may speak, plead, and question, the less likely their government is to lose its way. It is the muffled nations, not the noisy ones, that crumble unseen. Picture the archives in Washington, the parchment heavy with signatures faded brown. Those names were written by men who had known fear well, yet they bound themselves to open trial, to reason's slow discipline, and to the idea that even an enemy remains a person before the law. Their courage was not loud, but it was lasting. Now imagine the court clerk in Falls Church sliding Khalil's file into the stack of resolved cases. The law may or may not favor him, judges may differ. But the question his story leaves behind endures. Can a free country stay free if its rulers decide that speech itself may threaten diplomacy? That question has an answer, though each generation must earn it again. In moments of danger, restraint becomes an act of strength. To let the law speak louder than fear is not weakness. It is the miracle of self-government continuing its work. Every document, every courtroom, every honest debate is a small repair stitched into the flag itself. Picture twilight along the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, the stone figure looking out over a city still learning his lesson. Visitors read the carved words of the second inaugural, hardly noting that those lines were born of war, yet aimed at peace through justice. The marble does not move, but the republic within it still breathes. This nation has wandered before and found its footing again. It will do so if conscience holds steady. The next time fear leans on power's door, may the keeper within ask one small question: by what right? For in that question lives the true defense of liberty. And so I say to you, guard the law, speak your mind, and dare to trust that justice needs no secrecy to survive. The Republic can be saved. When that hour of testing returns, as it surely will, what will your answer be?